We're combining all the best old school wisdom with all the top new school methods to bring you the optimal way to coach and play the great game of baseball. This is the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass with Coach Bo.
Welcome to the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. This is Coach Bo. I want to give a shout out to Donald for my great intro. Donald does a fantastic job on intros and outros. And when you have a voice like that, I guess it's just kind of a calling. If you'd like Donald's information, email me and I can give it to you. I can share it with you. He does a lot of good stuff. As you can tell, his voice is phenomenal. And my editing partner, Sam, he's phenomenal. Again, like I said, last episode, email me. I'll give you his information. If you need anything edited, any kind of voice, video, podcast, anything edited, let me know. I'll send you his information. He is phenomenal and just a great person. These are great people. So with that said, welcome to episode 51. In the last episode, in episode 50, we discussed multiple strategies for coaches and even players to be better in cold weather, to get the most out of their practices in cold weather. And ironically, it snowed this past weekend. So the cold weather is here. Although I was talking to my neighbor who's originally from Michigan, and I know I got listeners in Michigan because I see you guys, I've talked to some of you. She was telling me that Michigan was 75 degrees and sunny this weekend, and over here in Idaho we had snow, albeit not cold. It was 30, 35 degrees, 25 degrees, so it's not super cold when it comes to snow weather. Nonetheless, it is cold weather time, and so go back and listen to episode 50 and you're going to get some really good strategies to handling cold weather better. Now, there's probably 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 different ways you can better handle cold weather practices, but at the end of the day, this podcast is about giving you the most bang for your buck with our strategies and the suggestions. As for this episode, I'm going to get right into it here. I have a coach that I really like and I follow on Twitter, but man, oh man, the coach made a post the other day and it said that you should allow pitchers, basically it was saying that you should allow pitchers to throw across their body if they can still throw strikes. Now there's some huge flaws here because they posted a video of a pitcher striding across his body. In other words, not striding directly towards his target, i.e. the catcher's glove, home plate. And he showed a video of a pitcher throwing a short, small sample size of pitches, and none of the pitches were all that great. And they posted a video of a kid striding across his body and throwing balls in the strike zone. So there's multiple flaws with this. One, the obvious one, is the erroneous use of anecdotal evidence. Showing a pitcher striding across his body and throwing a few pitches in the strike zone and then declaring that this is a perfectly legitimate movement. We should not be promoting strategies, movements, coaching techniques, or whatever, and then backing it with a video of one guy doing it. Now, there's multiple flaws on top of that. One, throwing strikes is not the objective of pitching. Command is not throwing strikes. The strike zone, the average strike zone, is about 400 square inches big. It's 400 square inches. And outside of extremely young players like 9, 8U and below, if all we're doing is teaching our pitchers to aim for the strike zone, you're not going to have a whole lot of success over time because hitters crush mistakes. They crush mistakes. So if your whole goal as a pitcher or as a pitching coach is to get your pitchers just to throw strikes, then you're not teaching them what it's really all about to be a pitcher. Command and throwing strikes are two different things. So one flaw, using a video of one pitcher throwing about 5 pitches or 3 pitches, and none of them are even that good. And then you have the quote that says, hey, he's throwing strikes. Yeah, but these are belt-high meatballs, which more often than not are going to get driven hard, maybe for outs, likely for doubles and home runs and triples and singles. If you want to coach pitching or you want to be a pitcher that focuses on just throwing strikes, then you need to go do darts. They have competitive darts. The difference between pitching and darts is that in darts, there's not a guy up there with a bat, a wood or metal bat, that's looking to ricochet one off the fence, right past your forehead or past your defense. So saying a pitcher's successful because their strike percentage is up is kind of like still using batting average, in my opinion. You should not be using batting average. I've been talking about that forever. You don't need to be using batting average. If you're using batting average, you need to move. It's 2020. And the same coaches that are all in on tech, and this coach is one who's all in on tech, and he's all in on new stuff, and all in on being progressive, and then he thinks throwing strikes is the name of the game for pitching, and it's not. It's command. Sure, you don't want to walk batters. I get that. So if some of you are listening, I get that. I've been in the game for 35 years. I'm not saying that by any means. You know me. If you've listened to these episodes, 50 episodes before this, you understand that I'm not saying you should just go up there and walk walk hitters. Of course not. But if you're just going up there and trying to throw it into an area that's over 400, in fact, the major league strike zone, which is going to be bigger than most youth or high school strike zones because the players are bigger, the average major league strike zone is like 450 square inches big. That's a huge target, 450 square inches big. And if the goal of the major league pitchers was just to throw strikes, that would be a terrible objective in my opinion and absolutely not the way to go about doing it. It's not just about throwing strikes, it's about command. I got a whole video that breaks this down, a 12-minute video with a thorough explanation of why strike percentage is not the stat that you want to use. You want to use command, or what I would call accuracy percentage. Accuracy percentage for a pitcher is how many times they hit the glove, not the strike zone, because there's a lot of times, I can't tell you how many times I saw this in the postseason, even in the World Series, dozens and dozens and dozens of times where the pitcher threw a strike and it got crushed. Hitters are looking for pitches in the strike zone. They're not looking to chase outside of the strike zone. So if our goal is to throw strikes, you're throwing exactly what the hitter wants to see. Now it's about getting a quality strike, a pitcher's pitch. You see what I mean? If the hitters are going up there and looking for pitches in their hot zone, in their hitting zone, which is most likely always going to be within the strike zone in certain zones, then why are we just trying to throw strikes? It's better to have a command and utilize zones, smaller acute zones within the strike zone. So this coach, who's got a lot of followers, posted a video and said, hey, we should let our pitchers just pitch and there's no one size fits all. Pitchers that stride across the body are not optimizing their delivery. Now, certain pitchers can't do it because their hips and their mobility, their hip strength, leg strength, core strength is not there. That's something that needs to be ironed out and fixed in the strength and conditioning component of pitching or athleticism or sports. So if we're trying to optimize the pitching delivery, it's not going to be straight towards home plate, the stride. The stride is not always going to be directly towards home plate. It could be closed a few inches, but this pitcher was closed more than a foot, like probably 18 inches. And now there's another issue that I haven't even brought up, and that's the arm health and back health that comes. There's issues that come with this. When your lower half, i.e. your legs, is working in one direction and your upper body, your arms, your core are working in another direction, that's not good. That's not good. I don't care how you slice it. The human body is not supposed to work in opposition. The body, the whole kinetic chain, it's all supposed to work together. So by saying, hey, you should allow pitchers to stride across their body and that's okay, that's completely false. Simply off that premise that your body should be working together, not against each other, or at least partially against each other in this situation. So one video is just anecdotal and we gotta just absolutely avoid anecdotal evidence. Second, go look at all the great pitchers of all time. Get as much video as you can of all the great pitchers of all time based off of ERAs, strikeout to walk ratio, things like that. All right, FIP, go look at that stat. Go look at those stats. Find the best pitchers that lasted 10, 15 years, not one-hit wonders, not three-year wonders, but people that made it Hall of Fame pitchers, and look to see how many of them crossed their body. Look to see how many of them crossed their body. Then also research a little bit on injuries that they had. Were they a higher propensity for injury? Absolutely. Almost always they're going to be. Now, everybody's a little different. Everybody's condition and shape and health is different, so it's not always going to be an exact science. Your lower half working against your upper half, that's just a bad deal. The strike zone is huge. We should not just be aiming for the strike zone and saying, oh, he's throwing strikes this way, that's good. And three, we should not just base all of what we're telling people, coaches, especially in the baseball, we shouldn't be coaching anything based off one player had success with. In fact, even in this case, it wasn't even success. These were belt-high fastballs, belt-high pitches. These weren't quality pitches. They weren't to a zone. It was like, hey, I'm going to try to get it in the strike zone rather than I'm going to command it to zones in the strike zone. All right. I got a little fired up there because I thought we'd move past that. And when I see coaches with a lot of followers and this and that saying something that's so just wrong on a lot of levels and so easily disproved, it's a little disheartening because we've come a long way as a baseball community, and I'd like to see the baseball community continue to improve, and stuff like that is only going to hold us back and put us back 5, 10, 15 years. We got to avoid anecdotal information, and we have to avoid erroneously identifying a successful outcome. And in pitching, a successful outcome is not throwing a strike. It's command. It's hitting the glove. It's about throwing to zones, small acute zones within the strike zone or just outside of the strike zone, depending on the count. Now let's talk strategy here in terms of pitching. This time of the year, pitchers should definitely be working on their leg strength. They should be doing split squat lunges, a lot of single leg pistol. You can do pistol squats or just single leg elevated squats. I'm a big fan of single leg and lunges laterally and also just forward and reverse. They should be doing forward, reverse lunges, all sorts of variety of lunges, good posture, chest up. I prefer to have the arms up, almost like in a field goal, kind of an upright position, preferably with maybe a little bit of weight, maybe a 5-pound or 3-pound pound weight in their hands. Definitely a lot of single leg work, a lot of lunges, a lot of balancing, a lot of split squat work. And you can look these terms up. You can look up like split squat, single leg squats, pistol squats, step ups, lateral jumps, single leg jumps. We should really, as coaches and pitchers, be building our leg strength and our core strength right now immensely. And the reason we're doing it more now is because we should be doing a little less throwing now, right? We shouldn't be doing as much throwing right now. We definitely should be throwing, but we should be doing less volume of throwing and more on the lower body. Now, what happens is if you wait too long to crush the legs and the core to get them stronger, is you get closer to the season and now your volume of throwing, whether that's bullpens or long toss or what have you, is now moved up. Your volume has increased and now you got a higher volume, a higher workload on your arm, and now you're, while at the same time, crushing your legs. So you don't want to crush your legs and have weak legs or weakened legs. And I mean weak, not that you're hurting them, you're just wearing them down because you're putting them through a pretty rigorous kind of strength and conditioning program. You don't want to have weak legs holding up your body and generating momentum and generating direction while trying to execute a high volume of quality throws or pitches. You can do it, sure. And young players can definitely get away with it more than even older players. But this is the time of year that you really want to get the legs stronger and the core stronger. And for that matter, get your arms stronger, your shoulders stronger. So less on the throwing and more on the strength, which may involve some weighted ball throwing. Absolutely. Speaking of like old school and new school, I'm a big fan of the weighted ball stuff. I think there's some methods and techniques that work a lot better than others. I think using a weighted ball, using a weighted implement, maybe a 1 pound or a 2 pound plyo ball to kind of work an arm through its throwing path can actually find and help to get a pitcher a more efficient. Now, you're not throwing it like a pitch off a mound, but just throwing it against the wall or throwing it against concrete, it can really help to kind of develop a better arm path because that extra weight doesn't allow for your arm to get too long or the technique to get too flawed. If your throwing technique, if your arm technique, especially on the back path, on the path back and up, when you take it out of the glove, you can use a weighted implement and it really forces your arm to be efficient and have a strong quality path, arm path. So something like that would be good to do right now while the actual throwing volume of the baseball is less. So there are some things I would recommend doing right now with the strength and conditioning of not the legs, of course, the core. I'm a huge fan of like windshield wipers. You can look those up on YouTube, windshield wipers. I'm a huge fan of knee raises, leg raises, side leg raises, reverse leg raises. I'm a huge fan of strengthening the hips. So squats are really going to get your quadriceps, get your calves. They're going to get your hamstrings, mostly your quads. Lunges are going to get the quadriceps, somewhat the hamstrings. But if you're going reverse lunges, those are going to get your hamstrings even more. They're going to get your calf muscles, aka your gastrocnemius muscles. But those hip muscles are hugely important. So you want to do a lot of side leg raises and a lot of reverse leg raises and forward leg raises. Knee raises is good too. You can do those you don't need to be up on a pull-up bar holding yourself up to do those. You can simply just stand on one leg and raise your leg side to side, up and down, back and forth, and just really strengthen those hips as much as you can and those external obliques and rotational oblique muscles, aka like not your six pack in front, your core muscles, but those side core sides muscles. I'm also a huge fan of karaoke. I'm a huge fan of the karaoke side shuffle, lateral shuffles, slides. When you do that, when you train that, go fast as you can once you're warmed up. I love reverse sprints, forward sprints. Those are always good. Change of direction shuttle runs. Those are great. I'm a huge fan of the karaoke and the side shuffle, lateral shuffles at a high, as fast as you can. I'm a huge fan of reverse sprints, sprinting backwards. Now, there's something that you must keep in mind, coaches, players, when you're doing this. When you're going to bust up your legs and you're really going to put them through a good workout in your core, even your shoulders and your arms, make sure you get your throwing done first. So warm up everything, get warmed up, and then do your throwing, whatever your throwing routine is for that day, whether it's just a short throwing program or a full throwing program, including long toss, bullpen sessions, flat ground sessions, live game situations. Get that done first and then put your legs and your body through the workout. That'll at least give it a day overnight to rest, recuperate a little bit, and in a lot of cases, it'll give it multiple days to recuperate. Do your throwing first and then your strength and conditioning afterwards. Throwing first, strength and conditioning afterwards. The caveat to that would be is if you worked out early in the morning, you got up at 6 a.m., worked out, say, before 7 or 8 in the morning, and then had practice or training later in the day with a substantial break in between. So you could do it that way. But ideally, you do your throwing early, get up and do your throwing early, get that all done early, or do it at the beginning of practice or at the beginning of the training, and then do the strength and conditioning at the end, or not even at the end, the last half. Because right now, you should be doing a high volume of strength and conditioning training, athleticism building, quality movement exercises. In other words, getting faster, stronger, more athletic. That should be priority number one right now. Now, to finish up, a really cool technique, a really cool way of training that I think is really neat for players. And this goes back to actually the coach that I've discussed early in this episode, at the beginning of this episode, in that I was very disheartened by the post about using a pitcher, throwing a few pitches in the strike zone, that's striding across his body and then declaring that this is an okay movement or this is something that should be not worked through or improved or optimized. That same coach actually posted a video of Patrick Mahomes throwing long football throws, throwing bombs, i.e. looks like, long toss in baseball. And the same baseball coach, who I really like, he posted this and I thought, wow, yes, that's absolutely true. And I think that it's a fun way for baseball players, pitchers especially, to throw a weighted implement, but have some fun with it and also get instant feedback, because when you throw a football in properly and your mechanics, your timing and things are off and your hand placement, your release point are off, you're going to get instant feedback. You're going to get a duck. You're going to get a wobbler. You're going to get a throw that doesn't look good. And if you throw it right, you're going to get a spiral. Sure, the hand placement on a football is not the same as it would be on a fastball or a changeup or a split finger fastball, but it does mimic the release point on a breaking ball. And nonetheless, it also gives you good feedback on a quality release point, whether the hand is supinated or behind the ball or pronated upon release. I think you can still absolutely use a football, and I think the benefits are definitely there. I highly recommend using this as a fun strategy I would have more than one football. I would essentially have groups of three. You could do groups of three. You have an offensive guy, a defensive guy, or you could even do groups of four. I think maybe even having a group of four might not be a bad idea. And you have two defensive players, two offensive players. One's a receiver, one's a quarterback, one's a cornerback covering the receiver, and the other guy is rushing the quarterback. Now, what I would do is not have him count alligators. I would have the guy that's rushing the quarterback. I would tell him, you are mandated to rush. You can't draw back into coverage. And I'd have him start about 10 yards to 15 yards away from the quarterback. And he's to go right when quarterback says hike, he's to sprint towards the quarterback, gives the quarterback some time, i.e. the pitcher some time, to get a throw off if he can do it quick. But it also gives him some pressure and he has to move like an athlete. And he may have to throw a little on the run and adds a fun element. You keep score. So you go 2-on-2. You can do a ladder tournament, meaning after 5 minutes or after 3 minutes, the team that's winning with the most completions or the most yards, or even you could say scores, how you work it out and how you score it is up to you, and you can be creative. You could have a ladder tournament, meaning the winners move up and the losers move down, and you could run a little tournament out of it. And maybe the winners don't have to clean up the field after, or maybe the winners get a few more hacks during batting practice, or maybe the winners, or the losers, I should say, maybe have to do a little bit of a bear crawl, or maybe the teams that finish in the bottom half of the tournament or whatnot. You can score it however you want, but I'd set it up something like that, and I'd have them spread out across the field a little bit. You could have groups of four, maybe two in left field, two groups that is out in left field, two groups out in right field, running off the foul line and using that as a line of scrimmage going out. You could have two groups, one in shallow left, one in deep left, one in shallow right, one in deep right, something like that. Now, there's other ways to do it. So whatever fits your field or your situation, or go out on the football field and do it. Go out on the soccer field. If you can use that, it's even better. And at the end of the day, you could simply just give each set of partners, a football, and let them throw the football to each other. Hence, at the end of long toss, or in the middle of long toss, or at the beginning of long toss, or however you want to throw it in, no pun intended, into your throwing program, you could just give them a football. I would definitely recommend having at least, say, 4 footballs would cover about 16 players if you did the 2-on-2 groups of 4. And if you're going to have all your pitchers do it with their throwing partner, then you need more footballs according to how many players you got, right? So I think throwing a football is awesome, instant feedback on throwing technique. And it's fun, and it's different, and the players like it. So I think bringing footballs out, just having them in a little bag along with the other equipment is a great idea. Maybe you don't do it every day. Maybe it's something you do every other week, or maybe it's something you do every day or as part of their throwing routine and throwing program. So I did see that post. I really liked it. And anytime we can get to a goal or optimize or improve our throwing or our skills in baseball or whatever it is, using other things, fun things, sometimes different things, all the better. So that was cool to see. So to recap here, let's not follow any advice that's supported with anecdotal evidence. You should definitely teach your pitchers to stride directly towards their target. You should have all your throwers stride as close in line with the target. Now, I get it. Not all pitchers, and some young pitchers functionally can't move optimally and get that stride. Their hips and things aren't strong enough yet, so they can't quite get there. But ideally, the pitcher will stride directly or just slightly closed towards their target, maybe a few inches at most, right? 3, 4, 5 inches, 6 inches at most, not 1.5 feet. It causes health issues because of the lower half and the upper half. Basically, the body's not working synergistically. It's not working together. That's a huge flaw. Anecdotally, throwing out a video or trusting a coach that has one video or one player or one thing that's successful or one thing that's not always good to follow. All right. You want to look for commonalities over time amongst the greats, whether that's coaches or players. If you look at the commonalities amongst Hall of Fame pitchers over the last last 30 or 40 years, you're definitely not going to see striding across the body. In fact, you're going to see very directional strides. Also, throwing strikes is not the goal of pitching. Maybe like at 8U, 9U, maybe. But even then, why are you not teaching them to command the ball, command the pitch? I wouldn't wait, because remember, when we're trying to throw strikes, we have to stop and think about, I think one thing that as I've gotten older, and I'm almost 40 now, I'll be 40 in a few months, one thing I realize is anytime I think something's pretty obvious or I think something's right, I always step back and go, is there another angle, or is there more to this? Is there more to this story? Is there more context? And when we look at it for years, we just push this, hey, he's throwing strikes, you can throw strikes thrown across your body. Well, first off, the goal of pitching is not throwing strikes, it's commanding the pitch. Because if all you're doing is throwing strikes, the hitter's up there pretty much only looking for strikes to hit. So if you're throwing what he's looking for to hit, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't add up, right? So we're trying to command and throw pitches in the strike zone, in the parts of the strike zone that best suit or optimize our chance of getting the hitter out. And on the flip side, the hitter's looking for pitches in the area of the strike zone that he can drive. And again, you can go on Vimeo, search Coach Bo. You'll see my strike percentage, my accuracy percentage video. Watch that. It's 12 minutes. It'll explain it all out. And in fact, I had a high-level Major League Scout, a very respected, long-time Major League Scout, very respected, tell me on the side that he really liked that video. All right. So this is coming from somebody like that is huge, because this is a person that's not quick to he's not a yes man. He's not a go along to get along person. So when he says something, really meant a lot. And he said he really liked the video. So with that said, you can go see what I'm talking about when it comes to assessing pitchers, not just strike percentage, but accuracy percentage. How often do they get around the glove? How close are they hitting the glove? We talked about this time of year, November. This is the time of year to be crushing the leg strength. And the nice thing about this is you can do it almost all indoors. Crushing the legs, getting them stronger, lunges, single leg squats, pistol squats, step up, step down, side step up, side elevated split squats, lunges of all different directions, lunges forward, lunges laterally, side to side, lunges back, reverse lunges. And not only just lunges where you step out and back, but also where you step out to wherever the spot is that you're lunging to, and then you finish in that direction. There's two types of lunges. There's the ones that kind of come back to where you started, the starting point, and there's also the lunges that kind of progress towards the direction, and they do work the muscles differently. So there's a lot of stuff there. Getting the hips stronger, leg lifts. Leg lifts are huge. You can go look up this stuff online. Leg lifts are huge, whether that's side leg lifts. I'm a big fan of pitchers doing side leg lifts, because when you're hitting and pitching, you're working laterally and then you're working rotationally. It's laterally and then rotationally. Also, this is a great time of year to decrease that throwing volume, spend more time on the legs and on the shoulder strength and the core strength. Lastly, on that point, you want to do all your strength and conditioning and your strengthening exercises after you've done your throwing routine, your throwing program, your bullpens, and any games you might be playing at this time. Although I think right now is not the best time to be playing games. I think that should start in January, in my opinion, depending on the weather and where you're at. But I think right now is really the time to hone in on your throwing program, your strength and conditioning, maybe some light touch and feel bullpens, and go from there. And the last thing, always trying to help you guys out. See these red flags, keep an eye on us. You can change your paradigm so you're not getting fooled, and you're not getting, not necessarily fooled, but also getting led in the wrong direction. I told you about that very well-known coach, professional coach, who also owns a very well-known business, who sends out periodically that say adapt or die, kind of pushing people towards technology, pushing coaches towards technology. And what I would say is probably the best college baseball coach right now, from Vanderbilt, Tim Corbin, said about technology, and we talked about this last episode. He said recently in the ABCA magazine, the ABCA publication, the Inside Pitch, he said he's not all in on technology, he's not all out. It's a case-by-case basis. He judges it case by case, and there has to be real value. He's just not adding a bunch of stuff just to add stuff, and he's not getting to get conned into just using technology just to be flashy and chase that shiny object syndrome. Just like most of us learn in life and business and all this, and fad diets and fad this and fad trainings, and business is definitely filled with this. We got to be careful not to chase those shiny objects. And a lot of this technology is phenomenal stuff. Very useful, but it's not just jump in just because we were told, or just because somebody's using it doesn't mean it's good. All right. There has to be huge value. And if you have questions about any technology, come see me. For youth practices, one of the best pieces of technology you can use is a stopwatch, or if you have like an Apple Watch or a phone that you can pull out. I don't like using the phone at practice, but if you have like a watch that you can time, stopwatch to me is awesome, because you can do so much stuff in terms of upping the speed of practice, the challenge of practice, the competitions in practice with that. And then just good old fashioned video. These smartphones, the iPhone, the Galaxies, all these phones now have phenomenal slow motion capabilities. You want to make sure you get the right angles, but those cameras and slow motion, the quality of those cameras coupled with a stopwatch can be a phenomenal asset. Obviously, things like Rapsodo, Edgartronics, things like that are super awesome, but I would recommend using like things like Edgartronic, the really high speed cameras for people that are players that are much older, or in individual training, like specific training for a player, not necessarily team training. I don't think the bang for your buck on time is worth it. I think there's so many other things you could do. And also, you can also just see with the naked eye a lot of things, especially at the lower levels. Things don't move as fast. And with the great cameras now on these cell phones that can do like 240 frame per second slow motion at 4K, it's pretty phenomenal. So 4K, 240 or whatever speeds they're at now. I know the iPhone, I think, is at 240 frames per second slow motion at 4K. So that's plenty fast enough, or I should say plenty slow enough to slow down and see good video. As long as your angles are right, it should give you some good feedback. So I'm a huge fan of technology. Love it. Some of it's just glitter, or I should say flashy. Not going to get a lot of benefit out of it. Some of it's phenomenal. It can be very useful, like hit tracks. Going to the batting cages with hit tracks, I think, is awesome. Things like that. Virtual reality down the road, hitting is just going to be like the main thing. You know, batting cages might be obsolete in 15 years. We've talked about that in previous episodes. I'm all in on looking for technology to help us, but I'm not all in just because it is technology. So that was a red flag I saw. The adapt or die. You got to adapt or die, coaches. You got to start using technology. You're going to die. Yeah, but that doesn't just mean any technology. It doesn't mean all technology. And it definitely doesn't mean all technology all the time, or even some technology all the time. So this episode was partially red flags, staying away from problems, staying away from getting suckered into some things, or even kind of following along because you hear somebody say it. I was just trying to help you, guide you guys, kind of steer you from going off the road. But also now we talked about some strategies. Right now should be strength, athleticism, strength, athleticism, flexibility, mobility should be huge right now. That should take precedent right now. When you're doing it with throwers, make sure your pitchers get their throwing work done first, and then move to that component of strength and conditioning afterwards. Follow me on Twitter if you want. And I'm not a put out just to put out stuff. I think that's not the way to roll. I think if I put out something, it's a big needle mover for the most part. 8020_baseball at 8020_baseball, 8020_baseball. You can check that out. I put out stuff once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times a week that I think are things that can really kind of help mold the paradigm of how you're coaching, how you're playing. Go check out my Vimeo showcase, my Vimeo collection. Just type in Coach Bo or 8020 Baseball, and that'll give you access to over a dozen quality coaching videos, training videos. And you can always email me your questions, coachbo at 8020baseball.com, coachbo at 8020baseball.com, B-O as in Bo Jackson, as in, like I've said before, not the French way, but the American athlete way. All right. So until next episode, episode 52, which will be out next Tuesday, take care of your health, take care of your families, and take this information and go out and be a good influence, a positive influence on the baseball community. Go make the baseball community a better place. Leave it a better place than you found it. You guys take care now. Bye.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.